ladies and gentlemen, this impacts employment, and it impacts employee values. So now we have younger generations coming to the table with some very different values, which I'll get to in just a moment. But many of those are a result of being part of the post-recession era. The second thing that we're seeing is rapidly changing technology. You know, there's been more technology developed in the last 5 years than in the last 50. And we never really stopped to think about that. But that's changing everything about the way we live, work, and do business. And it's certainly changing expectations of generations and their communication in the workplace. And the third thing we're seeing is just the fact that we're on the brink of the largest shift in human capital in history. So right now, the vast majority of organizations are managed and led and supervised and owned by baby boomer generation, which is no surprise. That was a huge generation of its time and came of age and was able to move into positions of power and influence and stay there. But now we are on this brink of a huge shift, and the U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics predicts that by next year, 2015, the baby boomers will no longer be the majority of the workforce for the first time in several decades. It will actually be Generation Y, which is currently, as of this year, will be between the ages of 19 and 32. And if you think about, well, that's the majority of our workforce, that means the majority of our workforce will be in their 20s. Not every organization is quite ready for a change that substantial. And we do have some polls available that are going to pop up. And I'd like for Lou to go ahead and put up the first poll question. And if you would please respond to that quickly so we can get the results in.
So we have, how concerned is your company about employee engagement? If everyone could just quickly click on wherever you stand there. We'll just leave it open for a few seconds here. Think through that one, either extremely concerned, very concerned, somewhat concerned, or not at all. Or I don't really understand what engagement means. We'll just leave that for a couple more seconds. We have 81% voted. So just think about that one quickly. Okay, I think we'll just go ahead and close this, and we've got several others. Oops. Okay.
So what are the results?
Results are majority, let's see, how concerned, boy, I'm not seeing them right here on my, I'm not seeing them, Sarah.
The results didn't pop up?
No, I didn't see them. Oh.
Okay.
Okay. Well,
Okay.
we have the majority are extremely concerned, 47%. So if you want to go ahead.
Okay, there. Okay, extremely concerned. Wow. Okay. Well, thank you for participating in the poll. So that's a great insight to actually how a lot of organizations are feeling right now. I mean, if you think about every kind of organization and every sector of our country, with the exception of technology, everyone is kind of afraid for the future because every single sector, with the exception of technology, is predominantly led and managed and supervised by baby boomers. So what's this mean for our future? Well, we're also, in addition, seeing kind of this unique emergence. We're seeing that we're on the brink of a huge retirement wave. Sooner or later, those baby boomers will begin retiring. And that's bumping up against this move towards a information and knowledge age. So we're moving away from an industrial area towards an information and knowledge-based economy, which, again, very interesting times for us to be living through. And it's okay that you don't necessarily know all the answers or that you're extremely concerned about employee engagement, because we're all in this boat together. We've never seen anything like this happen before. And here is the chart of the composition of the U.S. workforce. So as I mentioned, by 2015, within the next year, boomers will be about 30% of the workforce. Gen Y will be 39, almost 40%. And Gen X, which is sandwiched in the middle, is a very small generation. They are in the workforce in full and will continue to be at 22%. Well, let's talk for just a moment about who the future will bring, because we need to really fully understand generational values and some of this, what's causing this concern as it relates to employee engagement. And I want to start and just briefly give an overview to each of the generations. The baby boomers were born 1946 to 1964, and when we talk about generational differences and we talk about values and we talk about employee engagement, we know that our values are largely shaped during childhood and adolescence. Those are our most influential years. And that regardless of what happens later in our life, we carry those core values with us throughout our entire lives. So some of the values the boomers were raised with, they were really raised to, before I move on, notice how everyone in this picture kind of looks the same. And I'll get back to that in a moment. But they were raised to follow a very similar career path as the generation that came before them, in that you would go to school, you would get a job, you would get married, you would have children, and most American households could only afford one television at this point in time. Everyone watched fairly family-friendly programming together, and you would get a job and you would work in that job, especially in that same field your entire life, sometimes for the same company until you retired. And, only recently have we seen that kind of career path or life path change. But when we talk about values, the baby boomers were really raised to value loyalty, and were extremely loyal to their careers and employers. But then, boom, something happened in 1965. And Generation X started being born 1965 to 1981. One of the best visuals I can show for change that was starting to occur during this time is that of the Beatles. So here are the Beatles. Notice once again how they all look the same. At the tail end of the boomer generation in 1964, but just 3 years later, well into the Xer era in 1967, the Beatles look like this. So clearly we started to see change happening. And we have a generation that was born with very different influences. Some people blame this man because all of a sudden we had a childhood educator telling children, you are special, you are unique, do what makes you happy. And this is very important. Anyone born 1964 or earlier was really raised to value conformity and being very loyal to employers. But anyone born 1965 and later was really raised to value individuality and to do what makes you personally happy, not necessarily what you're doing for the common good or the community. So, as long as you're doing what makes you happy, maybe that means divorce, and we started to see divorce rates skyrocket, and the first generation of latchkey children be born. Now, what does this have to do with the workforce? Well, it means that if you're working with a Gen Xer, you're working with a generation that was really raised very self-sufficient. They're very independent. They hate to be micromanaged. They want to be given a task and trust that they can see it through. The late 70s introduced 30, we're going on 40 years of massive layoffs in corporate America. So now we have a generation being raised that's never known job security. And they live in constant fear of losing their jobs, which means that it goes a long way when you are constantly investing in their career and making them feel valued and important at work, because they're always worried about losing their job. In 1980, cable television arrived, and that might not seem like a very big deal, but now we have access to news 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Sometimes that news is good news, but most of the time it's bad news. Now we have that generation being raised on a lot of negativity, and Generation X is really characterized for being a very cynical and sarcastic generation as a result. They don't really trust anybody. And they're seeing the nation's leaders lie, fail to deliver on their promises. We also saw the dawn of customization, a trend that certainly hasn't gone away. and is certainly evident in the workplace, as well as the dawn of globalization. Instead of Woodstock, this generation was having Live Aid. And, well, just a lot of rebellion in and of itself. So very different influences in comparison to the baby boomer generation. And then, boom, something happened again, and Generation Y, future majority of the workforce, was born. 1982 to 1995. Now, they have some of the same influences in that they, too, have seen the nation's leaders lie and fail to deliver on their promises. They've actually seen the fall of entire corporations due to unethical practices. So they, too, tend to be a bit distrusting of hierarchy and authority. But they've also had some other influences, a lot of violence close to home, from school shootings to September 11. And so we saw the pendulum shift from really kind of hands-off parenting with Generation X to extreme hands-on or helicopter parenting with Generation Y. Generation Y is the most protected, supervised, provided for generation in history. And they have this great relationship with their parents, which means, you know, if you've been raised with this great relationship with your parents, you kind of walk into work expecting that same great relationship with whomever you're working for, and almost a casual relationship, almost like a friendship. So that creates some generational conflict. This generation has been dubbed the trophy generation because they've always been rewarded for participation and not achievement. But that also means that this generation has a really high need and interest in return on investment. If I'm giving my time to your company, I expect something in return. We all know this generation's been raised on technology, but perhaps you didn't know that on basic needs assessments, this generation ranks access to technology on the same level as access to oxygen and freedom. That means, ladies and gentlemen, they really can't even fathom life without it. They really believe they can't live life without it. And if your company is behind in what it's providing technology-wise, you're not even speaking their language. This generation has also had a very rocky transition from college to career. They've kind of been known as the failure to launch generation. But that's about to change, as I showed you in that labor statistics chart earlier. Now, it's hard to say who's coming next. We know it's Generation Z. And we're starting to hear a lot about Generation Z because the oldest Zs turn 18 this year. But we can only imagine they will be like Gen Y on steroids. And we're kind of moving towards the Jetsons era with robots being developed and utilized in other countries. And also, you know, Sir Richard Branson gets his way. We'll have space travel soon. And they will obviously be very technology-driven. And that's going to change. You know, when we look back on the last 40 years or so, we know that there's been more change than at any other time in the history. We have seen our values be redefined. We've moved from conformity to individuality. We've seen our workplace cultures be redefined. We've moved from very formalized structures and dress codes to very informal, whatever goes, flexible scheduling and workplace structures. We have seen, even within our workplace, that the workplace demographics are changing, and we're not only on the brink of a generational shift, we're on the brink of a gender shift. There are more women for the first time in history pursuing undergraduate and graduate degrees than men, and just more diversity in general. We have seen the concept of work and how we work be redefined. We've moved, again, from very structured processes and cubicle nation to very free-flowing, even playful work environments. So that begs the question, once again, is, okay, if everything about our world is changing, how are we changing to encompass and adapt to these new ways of work and these new generations that are coming to work? So I'd like to pause for a second, and let's open that second poll, Lou.
Okay, and this is within the next 5 years. Do you expect to lose any employees to retirement? So again, we'll leave this open for just a few Seconds and see how people respond. Within the next 5 years, do you expect to lose any employees to retirement? Definitely, probably, not sure, or definitely not. 70%, almost 80% voted, getting up there. Huge majority, yes, definitely. 95%. We'll go ahead and close that. I think I can share it. There we go. 95% definitely. So you got some major turnover.
All right. So that shows you're in good company, folks, and you're not alone. And yeah, we've got to start thinking about change and start thinking about the next generation. That's very obvious. You know, also, when we look at the labor force growth rates of our country, we can see that we're approaching rapidly an era of what's going to be perceived as the slowest labor force growth rate, again, in the history of our country. And so, yeah, we've got to think about being really competitive and really engaging to this next generation and prepare for that retirement wave. So I want to give you a couple of, I guess, homework assignments. And the first thing I'd want you to answer and think about after this webinar is what makes our business unique. I mean, really and truly, why would someone want to come and work for your company? And you've got to think about that in terms of, okay, we've got increased globalization, which means more competition than ever before. We've got increased customization. As I mentioned previously, we have generations coming to the table that have never known life without customization. They want those options, if you will, at work, whether it's how they schedule their work or their time or the work that they're doing. They want opportunities to customize their work environment. And we just have, you know, as with every young generation when they've come of age, they kind of feel that the world is, it's all about me. But we see this even more with this generation that's coming in the workforce, this future majority, because they've been the most protected, supervised generation in history. So Generation Y is especially going to ask this question, what's in it for me? And so not only what's unique about your company, but what's in it for me to come and work and spend my time with you? The second question you really need to ponder is, what do our employees need and value more than anything? What do they need and value most? Because if you're not tapping into those needs and values, you're not relevant. Or if you're still doing things the way you've always done them, you're not relevant. You're not going to engage. And clearly, with most of you being very, very extremely concerned about engagement, that may mean that you are not necessarily tapped into what your employees need and value. Everybody, regardless of age, wants opportunity. They want an opportunity to excel in your company, but also when we break it down by generation, you know, those boomers really want the opportunity to lead and leave a legacy. But don't neglect what other generations want. You're dealing with a generation in the middle that's been stuck in middle management for a long, long time. They really want the opportunity to further their careers. They're really hungry for skill development, leadership development, and then we have a generation coming up, this future majority, that's, you know, they've got a lot of spunk, but they don't have a lot of experience. So they really need to learn from others in your company. They need to be mentored, and they too will need to further their careers really kind of quickly to get up to speed and keep us competitive overall. So the other thing to keep in mind is that younger generations really want an opportunity to learn. They want to be challenged. They're easily bored. They multitask. They obtain information and master it very quickly. So you need to have a learning environment, an opportunity for your employees to learn new skills. And let's not forget recognition. And recognition doesn't have to be expensive. I've seen companies take literally rocks and write "You rock" on it in Sharpie marker and give it to employees as kind of a traveling trophy or something for their, as a paperweight in the office. But just something to say, you know what, you are important to us, you are appreciated, and we care about your needs and values. And let's not forget trust, too. both of these generations, Generations X and Y, they've been raised in very distrusting, negative, media-driven environments. They really don't trust anybody. It takes a long, long time. You have to earn their trust. So think about, what are we doing to build trust? Are we transparent? Do we do exactly what we say we're going to do? Do we follow through? So trust. Before we get to this question, I think we have one more poll, right, Lou? So let's do that poll real quick.
We do. So this is within the next 5 years. Do you expect to lose any employees to turnover? So if everybody wants to just quickly respond to that one. And we're down to just a couple of minutes left here. So about 6, I think. So let's see. We're getting a majority. And I understand, let's see. We'll leave this open. Huge, good unanimous group, definitely going to be experiencing that turnover. I'll go ahead and close this and share it. Yes, definitely expecting to lose employees to turnover at 55%, 35% probably, and 5 each, I'm not sure, or no, definitely not. So.
Okay. All right, good. So, we've got issues with turnover. We've got issues with retirement. So we have to, ladies and gentlemen, be able to answer this final question, and that is, how does our business make a difference in people's lives? Now, that might sound a little bit, out there, a little bit crazy, but it is really important. Every generation wants to feel that their work is valued and that the company that they're working for, that their work is meaningful and it's appreciated and that they're respected. But the difference is that for baby boomers and older generations, they will continue to work for your company even if they don't know the answer to this question. Younger generations demand to know this and demand to know it frequently, and if they don't know it, they will go on their merry way and we start to see turnover. Remember that younger generations are heavily driven by causes. 87% of Gen Y will buy products and services that they know are making a difference somehow in the world. They're very concerned about the future of their environment. They're very concerned about recycling and all types of causes related to that, and they want to give back. So cause-driven. But also, when you think about, well, how do you make a difference in people's lives personally, too? We're seeing this whole move towards urban redevelopment in almost every major city across the United States, and that's because younger generations aren't moving out of the city, and that's because they want convenience. They value their time. It's a huge commodity for them. So they want to live in close proximity of where they live, work, and do business. That's where that flexible scheduling comes into play, too. So just thinking about, again, those needs and values, but how you make a difference. And then also, naturally, you're going to think about, how are we going to improve the employee experience? What is the experience like every day someone comes to work? Is it a positive experience or a negative experience? Because now more than ever, with all these retirements happening in every single sector throughout our entire country, Generation Y is going to have its pick of jobs. And they're going to pick the companies that are innovative, that are flexible, and quite frankly, that are fun. And they want to know their work is making a difference, and they have a choice. And you have more competition than ever before to retain that talent. So you need to be able to engage employees by making a difference, making your work experience something that they really value and appreciate. Ladies and gentlemen, now is the time to be visionary and think about these generations at work and think about what everybody wants, especially in light of retirement and turnover and employee engagement. Because the fact is, if we're not changing, we're dying. And don't think of change as something scary. Think of it as a tremendous opportunity, an opportunity to really boost engagement, improve turnover, and reduce turnover, and bring in an entirely new set of ideas and opportunities to grow your business. So ladies and gentlemen, that's Generations at Work. I'm Sarah Sladek, and I'm happy to take some questions.
Go ahead and you can enter a question on the control panel there on your screen, if you can see that. We have one here, Sarah. Are there particular industry sectors that are going to be more challenged than others?
Yes, absolutely. So right now, the 4 oldest industries in the United States, and when I say oldest, I mean by median average employee age, so the industries with the oldest workforces are insurance, manufacturing, real estate, and healthcare. And so those are considered the 4 most at-risk industries when we talk about demographic shifts. They desperately need to engage young talent and to be able to do so quickly.
Interesting. We are at our mark, and we want to be very, very mindful of everyone's time. And again, thank everyone for your participation in this session, our first session of a 6-session series on Generations at Work. Reach out to me, Lou Dickmeyer at pdpsolutions.com if you've got any additional questions. We did record this session, and we'll make that available to everyone so that you can give it some further consideration. And again, thank you everyone for your participation today.